We have been at a place whereby we are asking questions about what then the regrouping that we see means for the country from a political and from a governance point of view. And we're getting into a conversation this morning with Professor George Wajackoyah, no stranger to the Situation Room, but is here this morning to help us in that conversation. As the Roots Party leader, we're looking at some of those issues this morning. Professor Wajackoyah, good morning.
Morning to you.
How are you doing?
Doing very well.
You're well? The last time we met, you were on your way to see your daughter.
My kids.
Your kids?
Yes.
Yes.
In Madrid, yes.
And back on Kenyan soil. And many things are happening. We're going to talk about those. But CT is going to welcome you this morning with our proverb. And he'll tell you what country we are in. And you can interpret that for us and tell us what you think about that. All right?
Wow. Wow.
We are in the land of honest people. Burkina Faso, formerly Upper Volta. The proverb: if the shade does not reach the goat will seek the shade.
Prof?
The sun. I'll just guess. I'm not sure.
Oh, no. You can't be wrong by the way the interpretation. Because it is your interpretation.
The sun.
What did it do?
What did the sun do?
If you can't reach the sun will reach you.
Okay.
Or the goat and the shade in this case could represent you and the sun.
As a person.
Okay.
Yeah.
We can go with that. No?
No, it's good. It's intergalactic. Yes. Because I hadn't thought of it that way. But it is true. You see the sun, it affects you.
Yeah.
And if you're in the shade, it won't reach you.
If you need it, you go outside.
Yeah.
At least the effect won't be as severe.
Actually.
If you need it, you go outside. You're feeling the effects, go inside.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a whole level of learning here, isn't it?
It is.
Okay.
Yes.
Prof, while you were away, or maybe even while you were here, certain things have been going on, and we're seeing the possible regrouping of certain things, especially along the political party lines. And usually this happens. We're not surprised that it's happening, in the run-up to an election. And it's crazy that we can say in the run-up to an election when we're 2.5 years out of an election. But that's where we are. It's political silly season, as I like to call it. Everything is already moving and shifting. And one would have to ask the question, why is everybody so nervous at this point for these regroupings to happen?
Thank you very much for that question. I will answer it in 2 tiers. I have 2 tiers to answer it. Tier number 1, it makes Ruto's work very easy. Because at the end of the day, these people are going to disintegrate. Each of those who are grouping together now wants to be a president. Some are grouping so that they can get the benefit out of that. Benefit is financial or a political position. That's tier 1. Tier 2, it's not culturalized like the one we have in India, where culture dictates groupings, political groupings. If you are a Harijan, you'll be Harijan forever, the cult system, whereby you cannot cross the line to Brahmin.
Or the caste system.
Yes. So the regroupings in India are cultural oriented, and nobody can come in and introduce another culture or political grouping. And finally, if you look at the US, for example, we have the Republicans and the Democrats. But then we also have the liberals. Liberals never carry the day, but they always spoil the vote. So in this case, in Kenya, it is actually money-oriented or political-oriented. I group with a certain tribe. I bring the numbers on the table. Then I get a slice of bread for my people. It is that culture that Roots Party has moved away from, and that's why we are standing alone.
I see. So all of these players right now, that everybody is in it for what can be for them personally.
Yes.
Where does the slice of pie which 50 million Kenyans sit on essentially come into play?
That's why we are now bringing in the new diversity. Can people now sit and move away from that kind of platform and think outside the box? That is the first question. Number two, where have we been with this kind of culture of orientation. Every election season, we are oriented towards a certain culture. We are Kikuyus. We shall rule for another 500 because we are Kikuyus. I'm just giving an example.
Of course.
And those are the words that came out from Gachagua. They came out now instead of coming out when he was deputy president. So let us group Kambas so that we have Mulima to rule the country for 100 years. It is 1 versus 40 tribes. Now, how do you think that people from other tribes will think? Mm-hmm. If these people have been in power for all this time, and please forgive me, I don't mind who is the president, so long as you're doing something good like what Kibaki did. Mm-hmm. So if it is that you're going now to diversify your knowledge on your tribe and clan, on the mountain, or on the lake, like Raila Odinga and group, then the lake will always be the lake. Because of those from the lake, their time to eat has come, they're now eating. It's now our time. That culture of our time, or is now our time, is what Professor Wajackoyah does not want to involve Roots Party in. And that's why you have seen, or you can see, that at the moment, we are like the Sinn Féin of Northern Ireland, of Martin, Jerry Adams and McGuinness. They said they were on their own. They wanted to get independence from Britain. They did what they did through the IRA to make their point known, and now Ireland is peaceful. So that is what we in Roots are looking at. Though it's Mickey, it may not be as easy as we speak it, but we have like-minded Kenyans, like probably yourselves, who have been very experienced with interviewing a lot of people who may see it that way.
All right.
You know, what you say is what I would refer to as aspirational. But does the voting population of Kenya subscribe to what you say beyond acknowledging that, yes, this is a good thing? Because our lived experience with our voting patterns speak the complete opposite. Many Kenyans say exactly what you're saying.
Yes.
But when we vote, that is not our experience.
Now, that you've raised a point which is very fundamental, and I was speaking to my friend, Dr. Duncan Ojwang, who is very good in this time of mythology in Kenyan politics. He's an expert in that area, though he's a lawyer. When you look at our cultural diversity, traditional diversity, religious diversity, you look at them as concrete. Then you look at alien diversity that came in now to reinforce the cultural diversity. You look at alien diversity like the borrowed colonial diversity that came along with the whites when they were coming. Then the issue of divide came in, political divide. People moved away from what Professor Okoh would call incantangerous philosophy or repugnant philosophy of repugnant rules as they were then initiated by the whites. So you'll find out that now you're moving away from Luo culture into Christianity, this animal Christianity, so that now you adapt another culture to behave like white man, you speak like a white man, you eat like him, you drive like him, and you marry one wife, and then here you are complete, you are civilized. Moving away from uncivilized creature to civilized creature. Now when it comes now to looking at us in terms of politics, we look at ourselves as the Westminster Assembly, as the Oval Office, or the Congress. We need to behave like. That's why you see notions of language change in symbiotic change of language of the Right Honorable Raila, of Mr. Speaker Sir. The diversification of that language is what brings in the divide. And because now we have been used to that kind of liturgy for the last 65 years without any breakings, then we are like animals being taken for a slaughter because there have been no breakings. If you look at Uganda, we have had breakings in Uganda. The military has come in. The coups have been in. You look at countries like Burkina Faso, which were also in the same trajectory after the French handed over power to indirect rule in that aspect. The soldiers, the young men came up and said, now, are we still going to follow into this trajectory? That if you want to run for election in Somalia, you must go to the elders to bless you, even if you're a skunk or with no brain, so long as you behave morally right? Or should we do things in the opposite way? That's why the military breaks in Nigeria have brought in another culture of realization. The military breaks in West Africa has brought another West Africa. If you shift that pattern and you go into Tanzania, you'll find out that the Tanzanians were able to go through that by their policy, which they had adopted, but which in the long run has paid dividends in Tanzania, where we have the one tribe syndrome. Mimi ni Mtanzania bwana, wasema nini? Mimi sio Mdigo, mimi Mtanzania. So nationalism comes in, which is transparent. Why? Because their leaders, the original leaders, showed the way in a correct way. Nyerere was not corrupt. Nyerere had one car, he had a bicycle, and he brought in togetherness, undugu. People, the capitalists on the other side in Kenya and other worlds, they used to abuse him. But look at how Tanzania is. Even though right now politically there are issues still pending, but when it comes now to cultural diversity, and now becoming back to your question, you find out the Tanzanian system is actually in a has already melted from the pot. But in Kenya, if anything happened today, then the pot will melt. And that's why you see what happened recently with Gen Zs. They came up and they said, no more to this. We shall now advance ourselves even to correct our parents in whatever they have been doing. We are no longer going to follow this kind of methodology. And that's why you see these groups, political groupings coming in. The same people have been there, but they're just changing from one cloth to the other.
In fact, I want to speak about the same thing, people you're talking about. And I think in March 2024, let me jog your mind a bit. March 2024, you went to a funeral that Gachagua attended as well. At that time, I don't know if you said it jokingly, you thought he would slap you. And he actually told you he doesn't think you're a bad man, except for the bang conversation that you've been having. Now, this same Gachagua, you are saying, is coming out strongly to say, well, we need to realign the mountain in a certain way. Is it are the realignments in Kenyan politics, in as far as it is concerned, a matter of familiarity, selfish interests, vision, ideologies? Because it is true, same faces, now regrouping. On what basis?
Very good question. Gachagua is a man who is living in a very uncouth environment. Not couth, very uncouth environment. What I mean by that is that when he was deputy president, we can see, and we still have evidence, probably you have evidence in your videos or what have you, where he came out as Shakespeare, as Plato with a sword. You don't do this, or you, mmelete share gani hapa, you never voted share yenu kidogo kidogo namna hiyo. A man of shares, man of very rhetoric language. Number two, he's a man who used to take the command of the country. The president would leave whenever we're going out for Mandamano, and he would come up on stage to say that, sasa tumemaliza. Tumemaliza, hii sasa imeisha. I remember sitting with Raila, Martha Karua and what have you, when we were preparing for Mandamano.
Yes.
And I remember us sitting, looking at each other, and trying to ask God. I said I had not written my will because I knew I was going to die. And then the rest were like, today, tumeisha. Kalonzo looked very pale. Martha Karua was very strong. Raila himself looked like, wow, today is our day. Mzee ameweka gear, because of the statements which had been issued by Gachagua the same day when
really,
he woke up.
As a result of what he said?
Yeah, because he said, today tutamaliza. Leo tunamaliza hii watu. Hakuna nini hamtasikia tena. Huyu mzee arudishwe Bondo kwa wheelbarrow, na vile tumeshindwa kumrudisha kwa wheelbarrow, leo tumeisha. So we sat down and we were like, now, how do we go about it? Raila is a very brave man, trust me. Some of us were shaking in that political room. But Mzee said, hey, we are going, no matter what happens. That's one thing that I've copied from Raila, being tough and tough to the realization of him being a true leader in that particular aspect, that particular time. So you'll find that Gachagua, on that day, actually, Raila's vehicle was shot by 16 bullets, 16 live bullets. I and Eugene Wamali and Oparanya were sitting in Eugene Wamali's car. We had 4 bullets in our vehicle. I don't know why God did not want us to be sacrificed. A lot of young kids were killed. a lot of people were displaced. And then the police were shooting us with live bullets. Why has Gachagua not spoken about that particular episode and during that particular time? Why hasn't he apologized to Kenyans to say, "Ata mimi nilihusika"? That's why he's a ripe candidate, suspect in the ICC. That's number two. When I went to Bishop Gitahi's funeral in Nyandarua, I went there, me and a Samaritan who was driving me. And I was going to a place I've never been. And I'd been warned that Gachagua will be there. I said, it's fine. So what if he wants to? I've been in jail before. I was detained. I've been shot. I work with a bullet in my system. So what, even if I'm shot? So when I went there, I sat and I could see people who were friendly to Gachagua who did not even want to shake my hand. Me, I didn't care. So when I stood up to speak, you're sitting in front of me. And I just wanted to tell him that, you know what? I don't fear you. I'm here in Kikuyu land. You have been using threats on us, but I don't. So he depicted me as mtu wa bangi, mtu wa sufuria, asikuje mahali popote tuko. So if a man can look into you and judge you without knowing who you are, and then say, categorize you, come on, let Gachagua come out today, and I still insist, to apologize to Kenyans. Then he can invite Raila. I'm sure they have invited Raila. Sasa Raila ni mzuri kushinda Kalonzo. Why is he putting his stomach in front by talking for Kikuyus and not many of them? Kikuyus have fought for the liberation we have in this country. They don't need to fight another war. They have made us to reach where we are today.
Could it be from a hangover? Could it be from a hangover that he was actually the second most powerful man in the country?
Yes.
And that, impeachment notwithstanding, being removed from the presidency, that he still feels that hangover of power that could actually bring about the influence that you speak of. Could that not be where it comes from?
Yes, you're right. And do you think that Wajackoyah can go and sit with Gachagua under the circumstances to discuss what for Kenyans?
Well,
you tell us.
You tell us.
Can you?
No, I am not. Unless he comes up and be man enough.
Prof,
and apologize to the whole nation.
Prof, we've seen some miraculous things happen where people who have sworn that things would never be under the sun, and not less than 3 months later, the same people are sitting in very close proximity with those people that they swore they would never have even a cup of tea.
I've been for 10 years. I've been in this field for 10 years since I came back. Have I ever changed my color? Well, secondly, well, you can go ahead.
No, I'm saying that it may not necessarily be you, but we cannot run away from the reality of the possibility. These things happen all the time.
Yes.
Somebody, for goodness sake, the president said just a few months ago that you should not take public donations you should not make donations. You should not, state officers should not do one or two things. A year has not passed and we've seen a turnaround of the same thing. What am I saying? That it's a theater of the absurd. Anything can happen politically, anything.
If we're to take pronouncements that were made by the president and his deputy when they took power with regards to one Raila Odinga, the back door, the traps that have been laid,
Man of chaos.
he will not. If we're to take all those things at face value, the situation we now find ourselves in, where on the one hand the president seems to be, it's like a family member, the best of friends.
A lost cousin who's come back after 15 years.
Most beloved brother. On the other hand, one Mr. Gachagua, the immediate former the president, is saying pleasant. The rhetoric is nice, pleasant, welcoming. I mean, anyone listening to what was said before would be completely confused.
You would think that you were unwell.
In fact, I'd think, wait. Are they the same people saying this same thing, or are they different? It's the same people. Now, if we say that is our politics, then we have a problem with our politics.
Because that is the ilk, unfortunately, that Kenyans have to choose from today.
Surprisingly, out of every 1,000 men and women, there's always one who is astray. And that one is me. I'm astray from these people because I know them. That's why they can't entertain me. That's why they have been rubbishing me. But I should not personalize the issue. What I want to say is, yes, there's no possibility of people working together. Mandela worked with the whites. Yet they had put him in prison for a very long time.
27 years.
But there is a principle. When somebody repents and comes out and says, yes, I was wrong, then reconciliation comes in. What I'm simply saying is, I'm here to hear Gachagua apologize to Kenyans.
Indeed.
That this happened, it was under my watch, I am sorry. The day he says that, I'll be the first one to call him for a cup of tea to discuss national issues. But since he has not said that, And most of his things is just talking about Ruto throughout. Ruto, Kasongo, Muongo. But he's not actually dwelling on issues affecting the country. That one is also not good. Like, for example, now if I came here and I was talking just Ruto, Raila, then I would be in the same worship with them. What we don't want to look at is those kind of rhetoric, empty rhetorics, where you want to please others by talking against the other, and you are with that person in the whole mess that you have today. That will not actually be the thing. And that's why I'm warning Raila today. I'm telling Raila that consult others, consult other political leaders, speak with them, including Wajackoyah. Get to know what we have for this country. Don't just assume that it's just you and ODM. You and ODM, you know it all. If you want to rule this country, you have fought for this country, you are my personal friend, we speak almost every day. But it's high time recognize other people. And that's why you see coups happening in countries, because people are not listened to. So if you get a young man like the president of Burkina Faso coming out and saying, no, enough is enough, and now making things right, and putting the GDP of the country at cross rate with Americans and saying we don't want this. Yes, if the time reaches and you have a young man like that, it's fine. It is fine with me. But we are not going to be ruled at. Chagua hii, awi Wajackoyah sasa bila kuhuku, hii NADCO report ndio hii, sasa weka minister. I will not take it unless you talk to me and I find out the legality and challenges that are likely to occur. That's number one. Number two, the constitutional implications of that kind of appointment. And that's why I like the LSK president. What's her name again?
Faith Odhiambo.
Yeah, if we had people like Faith Odhiambo, or if Faith Odhiambo stood for president, I would step down. Because she's a woman of integrity. She will come up and she will say no. She will say no to what no means.
Right.
But not issue. Leo tumekaa na wewe hapa, tunaongea mambo ya Ruto. Kesho unakuwa waziri, utaki hata kunipigia simu. I've seen that happen. These hypocrites now. Wengine wanasema mimi nilikuwa njaa sasa ninakula. Statements from people like Oparanya. What value is that? Come on, talk to people. Talk to Eugene Wamalwa, find out what Eugene Wamalwa wants with the DAP. Talk to Kalonzo, find out what Kalonzo stands for. Talk to Wajackoyah, find out what Roots Party stands for, and then let us sit and compare notes and then come up with a conclusion.
With the best solution,
but Professor,
essentially.
You know we're talking about politics, and it's like somebody going for a dance. When people go to dance, at least in the days when I was a younger man and we went for dances, you dressed up. You wore clothes that would make you stand out. You went and had a haircut. You trimmed your beard. You put on some smell good. You know, and you made sure that when you're dancing, you kept up to the beat. You know, you didn't dance the next song or the previous song. You danced the song that was playing. Now, part of the reason as a young man was because there were young women there. And the dressing up was so that I would be noticed. Yes, I wasn't just... Political parties are not any different. You have a value and you know it, but other people have to see it, even if you have to push it into their face for them to see it. But to sit back and expect they will see it, our politics is so self-centered, there is no way they will see it unless they realize that there's some benefit that can be derived. So my question to you is, what is it that Roots Party is doing so that they can be relevant, so that people can look and say, I want to dance with this guy. Let's talk to the professor on this particular matter.
Thank you very much again. I don't want to superimpose myself into talking about myself. That will not be a very good thing. But the only challenge I would like to say is, when you finish this studio today, follow me with the cameras to the city center, which I have not been for a long time. Or let's just go around cities in the country, and then probably we'll make our own judgment. Because right now, I cannot say that we are doing this different. I will be like others. There will be no difference. But let us go to the streets, and let's see how Wananchi will welcome me, whether they will stone me or whether they will speak with me.
Right. You will not be stoned. You will have very many people wanting to come to say to you. And the reason is because if I look at the campaign you had, it was a completely different campaign. And people liked the difference. Again, back to my question. As a political party, who is in an arena with other political parties who want to bring about the same change, at least they say they want to bring about the same change, what is it that would make other political parties, not individuals, want to work with you? And if you know it, how do you get them to understand it? That's
Thank you.
My question.
Actually, I have understood you now. Other political parties will never want to work with me.
Why?
Period.
All right.
Because they simply cannot stand me. They think I'm a madman.
Is it?
Okay.
And they think that I'm very outdated. I'm very rhetoric. And whatever I say is just mutu wa makelele. So on that particular point, yes, they will not want even to move near me because I'll tell them what I think is right.
But okay.
That's what they don't want to understand, to hear.
Prof, let me just say one thing. You began a conversation on marijuana at the time, but you seem to have been ahead of your time because that conversation is center stage right now in the medical world. Okay? And that conversation resonated well. Personally, where you lost me is when we started talking about hyena testicles. That's when I actually got lost.
Yes, I think I want to clarify that issue very clearly. In my manifesto, there is nothing lingering to the hyena, whatever. But what I said, nobody wanted me to clarify. Okay. What I meant by hyena and hyena testicles were the people who had looted this country and were going to chop off their not in an open market.
Oh, this was symbolism.
It was symbolism.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And this is clarified that today. And speaking of which,
those rich people who have become rich, we would say, climb the tree, let us find out. Then we take you to the tribunal, and then it's like we are chopping off, holding you by to tell us.
But the short and curly, yes. Okay.
I hear a lot of things, Prof. I hear people talking broad-based. We had a conversation with Suba North MP whom you met when you were coming in. And we hear broad-based, we hear inclusive government, we hear, all sorts of things. What we rarely hear is where the place of the Kenyan who has their interests that need to be met. And I heard something profound this morning from another lady who works in grassroots, at the grassroots level. And she said, you know what? Political systems are far from the people's interests. Far from the people's interests. And so I don't think that Kenyans care who the president is. So long as certain things are being done, and so long as the things that you say you will do or that the Constitution requires you to do, you actually do. Feed your people, care for your sick, send your children to school, provide a conducive environment where they can do business, where they can work, where they can trade. I rarely hear these things coming up in the conversation of people who form political parties or who have political consultations about what they want to do come 2027. Why?
It's difficult to answer that question. But as a roots party, we have our manifesto, which is our guideline, which is subject to improvement from time to time as per the situation. And we have stood firm with what we are standing on. And I'm glad that our friend here mentioned about the weed economy, which has now become the new world economic order today, where countries like Taiwan have moved away from cement construction or heavy-duty construction industry into light-duty fiber-oriented industry with various aspects of manufacturing that create jobs. That has also moved into Japan, where Japan moved into cyber science long time ago and introduced cyber technology as a formal education requirement. We have also looked at South Korea, which by 1966, after it just became independent, has moved to a world economic order by changing patterns without being influenced by foreign agitators like the World Bank, Bretton Woods institutions, or the IMF, down to the throat of Kenyans who have remained traditional, who have refused to liberalize their mind, who are actually working under the dominant prevailer in terms of mind setting as far as the economic agenda is concerned, and not looking into issues of sustainability or sustainable rhetoric. So when it comes now to the so-called mindset we have, which needs absolute change, Kenya has a Kenyan politicians have hereditary mindset. I inherited from a white man. I want to better myself by making my son, replacing myself with my son or my relative. So the same lineage of political mindset is there. For example, now if you find me, Wajackoyah, I'll be grooming my son to take over. Mm-hmm. You can see honorable friends like Kalonzo taking his son to East Africa. Raila Odinga taking his daughter to East Africa. And Mturi's son being abducted for whatever reasons. So that kind of mindset need to be broken, and be broken by force, because we do not have to have software of talking. The time for talking in my government will end.
You also said something to the effect that if you did become president, that one of the things that you would do was jail anybody without question.
Not
in
without
terms
question.
No, as in without question who was involved in corruption. That there would be no grey lines. It was clear that this person was involved in corruption. You face the full
I don't
force
want
of
to be
the law.
Idi Amin, and that trajectory is not what I said. I said that we shall establish tribunals. Those tribunals will have a jury. Civilians will be involved, members of the armed forces will be involved, as well as the police, who will actually follow whatever constitution it will be, guidelines of the constitution, because there's nothing wrong with forming a tribunal to try these people so that they can exercise their legal rights up to the appeal level.
All right.
And if they are found guilty, we shall introduce the death penalty by hanging or by choice. You can either accept to be hanged,
or we hang
or
you.
you can accept injection.
You don't accept to be hanged.
So what you're saying essentially is that people who've been found guilty should actually die.
Be hanged, and not to be taken to jail.
Professor.
Okay, so that was it's a little bit more.
I don't want to bring in a certain point here. Professor, you're a professor of law. Yeah.
Yes.
And I just want to give a bit of the background. You have studied law in the United Kingdom. You have your US law as well. University of Warwick, I believe, 1998. You have taught law, economics, human rights, and cooperative constitutional international law at the US and Kenyan universities. Now, I'm coming to your style of, justice, the justice system. Even as we're speaking today, there's a concern around, what is happening with the judiciary? There's always been that rift. The executive, the judiciary, the arms of government, independence, etc. Bring in corruption as well. Essentially, what I'm looking at is the power and the space of the judiciary in this country. When will politicians, because it's on record, that they interfere essentially with every independent institution that ought to work for Kenyans? With your background in law and your vision for the tribunals, what else would you be doing different for this country and as far as judicial independence is concerned?
First of all, I will establish I'll look at the constitution, or I'll ask Kenyans to look into the constitution and ask themselves why certain cases take forever to maturity. That's number one, especially corruption cases. Number two, we shall have tribunals to try corrupt cases. We shall introduce the death penalty. Being a lawyer does not subrogate me from adheration to justice. If you look at Afghanistan, for example, because I'm talking from where we have had examples. Let me not go to Afghanistan. Let's go to Greater Somalia today. Greater Somaliland was the most corrupt country in those old days because of infightings. And the moment they broke away from Somalia and established a republic, they introduced Sharia law, which hanged almost 70% of the thieves. Right now, that's the only country you can go with your money and wallet and leave it on the streets and go somewhere and you'll come and find it. That is Greater Somaliland. If you go to China, the Chinese themselves have introduced what you call the martial Guangdong law, which completely wipes out corruption. It doesn't matter which position you have in society, you'll still be tried. Now, if the Chinese are doing that, and they come here, and they come here to thrive in corruption without knowing that when they go back, they will be tried. Why not us? By coming to your question, matters judiciary are very, very fundamental. We had a judiciary during Jomo Kenyatta's time. It was doing very well. We had a judiciary during Kibaki's time. It was doing somehow very well. But the judiciary was captured by Moi, and now Ruto has captured judiciary full time to do as they want to do. We shall do away with this. In fact, I'm online and I accept. I'm in agreement with the Nasir Mullah Ahmed Nasir that the current crop of judges we have, they should all go home, resign and go home because of the cases that they have done. How do you come up as a Supreme Court and you yourself violate the Constitution? You tell a certain lawyer and his team not to appear before you, and you don't give them the right to defend themselves. Is that what we call justification in judiciary? The issue of executive interference with judiciary is, it is them who actually anoint them to go and sit there. You could look at the Supreme Court judgment after the election. I was part of the participants. I was enjoined, and I had my lawyers on the panel. When I went to that court, the so-called Chief Justice, Martha Koome, she came up with her Meru accent to address me in court by saying, Wajackoyah, you can go out. You are supposed to be... And I had ran for election and spent millions of shillings on the election. And here you go for your rights because you are one of the victims.
Seems that you took that a little personally.
No, yes, it is, yes. Because she was the arbiter who appearing before her. She was supposed to hear and listen to me, not chase me out of the court. Yet I'm also an advocate. And by the way, we went to the same university, and I think I will yet to check my marks and hers and to see who got higher marks than the other.
Okay, so it would appear as though because of that thing then that happened to you personally, that then now this is what becomes a national issue.
It's not,
and many could argue that it is the same case, whether we want to look at one of the lawyers enjoined in this particular petition to have, the members of the Supreme Court removed, that there was a personal matter that took place. And that is what has now graduated to one that has grabbed national interest.
No,
is that not the case?
That's just one of the things.
So there are other issues apart from what happened to you personally that would bring about this issue.
No. Okay. That is a small thing. Sometimes you can have...
Sometimes...
Yeah. Oh. But what I've been looking at as her judgments and her pronouncements. For example, if you come and take an advocate who has worked so hard to reach that particular level, and you say that what you are saying is hot air, and you don't explain, what is the legal definition of hot air? What is the Longman dictionary definition of hot air?
But you're saying nothing.
What is the British version of Oxford definition of hot air?
It's just going to rise and disappear. Nothing. Okay.
So those are the judgments.
So I want to come back to this particular issue of an opposition. That those who formed government and realized the need for an opposition said that there were going to be certain checks and balances in terms of checking the excesses of the government in place. Now, these are leaders in their own right. And we come back to the issue today whereby, many would argue that there is not an effective opposition in place today because of, bringing opposition into government. What's your position on that?
That one I will not have very good words for Raila, who's my friend, because Raila Odinga is effectively in government. When he says he has donated, the so-called experts like Oparanya, who will go there and say we wanted to eat, what do you think Kenyans are feeling like? Are we just some kind of mitumba? 4 experts. Some of them have cases in the ICC. Those cases are withdrawn overnight. What kind of an expert is this when somebody has been facing corruption cases?
Which experts do you speak of that have cases?
I was just answering your question. Okay. I was coming to the opposition. I think you asked me about the opposition.
I did. Yes.
And I was telling you that I may not have very good words for my friend Raila Odinga.
Carry on.
With the ODM fraternity. What Raila ought to have done, in my opinion, he should have come to speak to us who are fighting with him that particular time. And probably would have accepted to donate some of us to the expert, so-called expert, instead of taking people who had cases at the ICC, which were not anyway validated. What we know is that some of them rushed to be cleared and then appeared in Parliament with the clearance certificates that you have been cleared by ICC, now we can go for the meetings. What does that mean? Is it not a slap into people's faces? So we do not have that opposition through ODM. If what ODM is doing right now is to join the government,
what would
then it cannot be in the government and at the same time be outside the government.
Indeed.
That
Now,
is not the opposition.
what would an effective and sustained opposition look like?
Yes, sit on the opposite bench and interrogate what your opponent is doing.
But haven't they been doing that, sitting as minority, but at some point working out when they were fully Azimio? What difference did it make to sit in the opposite bench?
Well, sitting in the opposite bench without an opposition leader to counter the government, if it was parliamentary system, is different from calling yourself a minority, and when it comes to voting, you all vote together like pigs.
Well, looks like we are an animal farm here. The points that you raise, Professor, speaks of a certain disdain you have for what you see as our politics currently and the direction that things are taking. That sentiment is shared by very many Kenyans. But the thing that we don't hear enough of is how it is a solid plan of how we will get out of this morass, this unending vicious cycle of poverty, of violence, of corruption, of disregarding the law, how we will get out of it. Because it's like all the things that I have mentioned have taken a life of their own, and they seem to be the negative and vile principles by which our lives are measured by now. But the plan to get us out of this, what does Roots Party have to say on this particular matter?
We have 8 points, and I'll repeat them. Number one, we need to look at the government and trim it. We need to do away with the county system. We need to incorporate counties into states. We need to have, particularly, maybe we revert back to the old provinces, have 8 regions. We need to have regional parliaments. But the key word that I'm looking at is the revenue allocation. Revenue allocation. We need to look at each area or each region with its potentiality in terms of economic development, in terms of sustainable development. Now, for example, if we had Rift Valley State with a chief minister or a prime minister, we shall have all the counties incorporated into that state. Each country will have its own assembly as the beginning point of contact with the Mwananchi. If we look at Narok, for example, Narok is one of the most productive counties in the country, yet it gets very little money from the national government. But if we allowed Narok to legislate on its economic activities, depending on how much they want to spend in terms of healthcare, education, then we should allow Narok to harvest from its financial gains in terms of tourism. Narok still becomes number one. When it comes to wheat farming, Narok is still number one. When it comes to hides and skins and meat, Narok is still number one. So let the people of Narok sit in their county assembly and say, okay, this year we've gotten in this amount of money from tourism. How many schools do we have? What are the necessities, the immediate necessities that we have? So they will vote from what they have gotten from their tourism. Say we shall apportion ourselves 30% of what we have gotten, and then send 30% to the state government to maintain what we call instrumentalities, and I will explain that in a minute. And then the rest now should be decided by the state assembly in Nakuru for appropriation by the national government. What I mean by that is that out of this 30% that Narok has, it will prioritize what it needs in terms of development, instead of taking the entire amount to the national government so that it is apportioned. And that's why counties are failing today. Counties are not paying their workers, employees. They're not even paying the people they are working with in terms of development. So now, it's up to the state assembly in Nakuru to also legislate on how much it has got from each and every county.
Okay.
And now apportion part of it to the national government. Whatever is remaining will be used on instrumentalities. If we have infrastructures that passes through Nakuru to another state, then how much levy do we have on this infrastructure?
We speak as though there are no people within the county governments today who would know things like this and then be able to get those things done today. What precludes them from doing that today without a new leader coming into?
That's why Roots Party is unique, because that's what we have. If you look at other countries like Nigeria, they have done well on that policy. If you look at the US, you'll find out that states like state of Indiana or Indiana state is good in potato production. So whatever it harvests from potato, it legislates from the local assemblies, depending on how much has been gotten within that assembly. They appropriate what they have, send the rest to the state assembly, to the local state assembly, and from there now they come into issues of maintenance of instrumentalities and the monies that they can apportion to the national or the federal government. That would work very well here, other than harvesting everything and taking it to Ruto government, national government, so that now counties can be given a certain percentage as laid down by the parliament. And that's why you see counties being frozen out, because they cannot operate. Governors have no money to pay their workers, to pay their contractors. There are contractors who have never been paid, even from the other assembly, and everything is going down.
So essentially, what you're saying is devolution could actually work. It can work if it is done properly, and if both the county and national government actually do what they have to do.
That's number one.
It should work.
Yes, number two, we look into the Constitution. Ask ourselves what went wrong in the Constitution, and let us go and ask the people whether this still stands. What do you want to do? If you have a very well streamlined government with a leader like the leader of Burkina Faso, who will not take his personal interests at heart and come out, it's fine. Look at me, for example. I'm not bragging, but have you ever heard that Wajackoyah has been corrupt or has slept with a schoolgirl? I teach in USIU where there are so many students. What have you? Have you ever heard that? Have you ever seen me with bodyguards? Have you ever seen me running around, what have you, with the pocket phones or what have you? And I say things that I can be arrested anytime when I reach out.
Even leaving the store.
So you need to come out and sacrifice yourself if let be. If something is wrong in the government, you point out. For example, in Ruto's government, we have this Farouk man. Has he become the king of Kenya today? They should actually come out so that the country can have we can restore confidence. But if we don't speak against those kind of characters, then why are we afraid?
And why are we afraid? And I think that's a good note to end on. Roots Party leader Professor George Wajackoyah has been our guest this morning, and looking to some pertinent issues. I keep saying that conversations must continue, and we would like to continue those with you and see what the vision really should and be lived and birthed for Kenya. Thanks so much for being in the Situation Room this morning and sitting on the hot seat. Prof, always a pleasure to have you here.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.